Good morning, everybody. This is the NBA Retro Show with your host, Glenn, on the 15th of November. And I'm going to try to make it a quick show because there's a lot to cover today. We had a lot of big performances last night, and you're looking at them on screen. You're looking at Tyrese Haliburton, and that is Tyrese Haliburton of Jeff Just's LA Guardians. And he had a huge night last night, scoring 58 points per 48 minutes, 58 fantasy points per 48. So how you get that number is you divide the player's fantasy points by his minutes played, and you multiply it by 48. Very simple calculation. And quite a game from Haliburton. Haliburton in 38 minutes last night shot 18 attempts for 33 points, very efficient, but the big number was the assists. He had 15 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, and look at there, 0 turnovers. And that is coming from a guard. Unbelievable performance by Tyrese Haliburton. And I'm sure the Guardians are reaping the benefits of that one. San Diego Saints had the number 2 guy last night. That was Joel Embiid, usual suspect. Embiid, currently 29 years of age. And he's one of those guys that the Saints are hoping is going to stick around well into his 30s. But, this is the prime probably for Joel. And he is definitely a great player. 39 points on 22 attempts. He had 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, no blocks, and 5 turnovers. Embiid does run like a point guard. A lot of times they run that pick and roll at the top of the key with him handling the ball. And he's quite amazing to watch. I really liked Joel's game. For a big man, he's just amazing. I mean, it was Shaquille O'Neal. I know everybody loves Shaq and everything. He's a funny guy, but his game was quite boring, in my opinion. Just get in there, back people down, slam into them with that gigantic frame of his, and then dunk on them. Pretty boring, and I'm glad basketball is turned, the corner in that respect. I used to say it back in those days when Shaq was dominating. I said, you know what? Teams are going to have to start shooting over the top of this stuff. And sure enough, that's what they do now. You got, Steph Curry leading the way, Damian Lillard, these guys who can shoot from well beyond the three-point line. It makes you wonder why the guys in the old days couldn't shoot that well. It's like it seemed like a struggle just to get up a shot, an accurate shot from right at the three-point line. These guys are practically half court sometimes and just nailing them. But at any rate, I really like Embiid's game because he moves like a smaller player. He's amazing to watch. At any rate, I got to keep moving here. We got Nikola Jokic. Jokic with another big game, 52 fantasy points per 48 minutes. He plays for the Copperheads, Mark Jones's team. They're hot. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of Oklahoma City Thunder. That's a team that William is running. 60 fantasy points per 48. That's actually the best performance of the night. And Anthony Davis was very close with 59 of his own. I mean, there was a lot of big performances last night. Shai Gilgeous, 2 turnovers, 7 steals. Wow. Big numbers there. 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Anthony Davis, of course, doing his thing. 11 rebounds, 5 assists. He had 6 blocks, 2 turnovers. DeJounte Murray of the Saints with the big game, but not per minute. He played 38 minutes, and he scored 38 per 48. But still a strong game overall. He had 30 fantasy points in those 38 minutes. Good shooting, 32 points on 21 attempts. He had 10 assists and just 2 turnovers and 3 steals. So DeJounte, I think, there's more to come from DeJounte Murray. He has not reached his full potential, and I see him becoming one of the better guards. He's already got a pretty high ranking, but I think he's gonna move up the ranks, especially at his position. Azar Thompson, the rookie, Mark Jones's Copperheads, 38 fantasy points per 48. He played 35 actual minutes, 12 attempts, 21 points. He had 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 2 turnovers. Randy's Poway Eagles produced Austin Reeves, a guard last night from the Lakers, 46 points per 48, 29 minutes, 9 attempts, 16 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists. Strong game there from Austin Reeves. Herbert Jones, forward from the Lake Show. Phil Johnson's team, the Showtime Lakers, 43 per 48, 31 minutes. He had 8 attempts for 19 points. Strong there. 5 steals in the game. Jimmy Butler, AJ Nardi's LA Clipper team with Jimmy Butler logging the 10th best performance. And he did it on 34 minutes, 14 attempts, and 32 points. Good shooting night by Jimmy Butler. There were some low-minute leaders there. We had Ivica Zubac with 26 minutes played. I considered players who played 26 or less low-minute guys. And 44 fantasy points in those minutes. Another big low-minute performance was Kelly Olynyk from the Lake Show. That's Phil's team. 24 minutes, 48 points. Williams, Oklahoma City Thunder produced Josh Giddey, 44 fantasy points per minute in 25 minutes of play. Nick Richards, AJ's Denver Nuggets, 42 per 48, 25 minutes played. 23 minutes played for Phil's Lake Show. LeBron James, 44 points per 48. Here's a look at the top free agents. Torrey Craig on top of the list yet again, 23 minutes last night. Looks like he had about 5 rebounds. Trying to see here. Hold on, everybody. Take 2 on the top free agents. Your top free agents from last night: Duncan Robinson of the Miami Heat checked in with 36 minutes of play, and he scored 19.5 fantasy points. Haywood Highsmith of Miami also 33 minutes, 19 fantasy points. Jabari Walker, who was recently released. Jabari with 19 fantasy points in 21 minutes. Najee Marshall had 21 minutes played and 16 fantasy points. Joe Ingles with 16 points in 21 minutes. He's a member of the Orlando Magic. And this guy here, Ochai Agbaji, I guess. He had 26 minutes played, about 15 fantasy points. John Conchar of the Memphis Grizzlies with 14 points in 18 minutes. Julian, let's check him out. Champagne, is that Champagne? Champagne? Another French player. A lot of French players these days in the NBA. He had 11 fantasy points in 31 minutes, not great on the 48-minute basis. Jackson Hayes comes in at center for the Lakers with 11 fantasy points in 21 minutes. A lot of decent performances as you can look down the list. You've got Terrence Mann, Reggie Jackson, Jacob Gilyard. So there are some free agents out there to look at if you have some needs. And it was a very busy night in the NBA because these lists are quite extensive. But here's the rookies from last night that went off. You got Azar Thompson, 28 fantasy points in 35 minutes. We talked about him on the top 10 list. Keontae George of the Utah Jazz. And Keontae, let's have a look here. He plays for the Spurs. Good game for him with 17 points. Kason Wallace of the Mavericks, 17 points. That's the Mavericks in this league. Jordan Hawkins of the Saints. He had 16 fantasy points. Good shooting night for Jordan Hawkins. That's what he does. 25 points on 17 attempts. He had 6 rebounds, 3 assists. No turnovers, most importantly. Jordan Hawkins, the sharpshooter, formerly of the Yukon Huskies, national champions from last year. Derek Lively, another rookie, plays for the Kings. That's a selection I made for that team. 16 points. He was the number 1 center taken in this draft. Brandon Pajemski once again showing up. 15 fantasy points. Chet Holmgren of the Warriors, Phil's team, 11 points. Victor Wembanyama, regular suspect on the list, 10 points. But he's not really going off. I mean, you can see his 48-minute stats are not like off the chart here. So Wembanyama has got some work to do. If you look at his numbers here from last night, took 15 attempts, and if I'm not mistaken, only 8 points on those 15 attempts. He excels at rebounding, as you would expect, 14 boards, 2 assists, but 5 turnovers. The guy is turning the ball over quite a bit, and you don't want that to be a weakness, especially if you're not putting the ball in the bucket. Embiid has a lot of turnovers, but of course he scores a lot of points and he gets to the line a lot. So Wembanyama, the young kid's got a lot of improving to do still, but I'm sure he'll be fine. Tumani Kamara with 8 fantasy points last night, and Vasily Micic with 8 fantasy points. I'll stop right here at Jaime Vaquez, 7.6 fantasy points, and he plays for the Nuggets. Micic, by the way, is a free agent. Well, let's have a look now at the injuries. I didn't do any short injury videos. Didn't really have the time. It's a little bit time consuming to do even the short videos because you got to set everything up. So let's just go over a couple of them here. Isaac Okoro out with a knee issue, and you can see the news there. He's not going to play against the Blazers on Wednesday, and that would be today. He's been out for 5 games. He plays for the Saints in this league, of course. Ben Simmons, Sacramento Kings in this league, still nursing the bad hip. And this has always been the rap on Ben Simmons' injury problems. And it looks like it's not as serious as it could be. So that's good news for Ben Simmons owners. Christian Rolocco, illness, yeah, standard thing. A lot of people get sick, can't play. DeLon Wright, this is back to November 11. So, these injuries are getting pretty old now, so not much to report there on that one. Before I round out the show today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the salary cap ideas I had. And I've looked into it a little bit, and I thought about, the $232 million cap using real life salaries. But there's another route we could take in terms of salaries. And just right off the top, I'll say maybe we could redraft the entire league using an auction draft. And my idea would be $150 per team. And we just get together, all decide well in advance when we can all be here at the site and do a live auction draft, which would be a lot of fun. And what would also be fun about that is that we would find out our own valuations of players. And it's always fun to see what people will pay for players, how much they're going to dig deep into their pockets for a guy like Jokic or Luka Doncic, guys like that, Joel Embiid, these great players, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the like. It would be interesting to see what people would pay for them. And it would be just a live auction draft. It doesn't take very long. A lot of players would just go for like $1, I would imagine, because usually the top players are the ones that eat up all the money. And then after a while, everybody's out. It's just $1 per player. Now, if you've never participated in one of these types of drafts, the way it works is it's like a draft. Each person has a spot in the draft. Say you're fifth. First 4 teams, they nominate a player, and then everybody bids on that player. And when it comes your turn, you nominate a player. It doesn't have to be a great player. It could be a mediocre player. There's strategy involved in it. Sometimes you might nominate lesser players just to see if you can get other guys to spend some of their cash before the better players come along. And that is a strategy I've used, and it works pretty well. You bring up kind of a medium player who's decent, and people still have a lot of money, and they get excited, and then they blow a lot more money than they should on a player that they could have gotten a lot cheaper if they would have waited. So that's kind of fun. And also on top of that, I would like to say that if we did that, it is a continuous league. And what I would do is I would inflate every player's salary by $1 per year. So if you've got Jokic for $60, next year he's going to cost you $61. So basically, if you had a roster full of 15 players, you would see an inflation of salaries by $1 in the off season, and that would be $15 extra. So you'd be over your cap. You'd be from 150 to 165, and you would have to make room. You would have to basically waive somebody who makes at least $15 or more. You'd still have a 15-man roster, active roster. The best ball thing would be gone because we're going to go 48-minute stats next year. It's just going to be 96 minutes at guard and forward, and then 48 at center. And I will do the calculations using the spreadsheets program that I have to post the scores. What I can do is I can go in and change the scores for each team in the system, and it will automatically, show you the results, and it will be reflected in the standings. But as far as the salary is concerned, I want to stick with that today because there hasn't been enough talk about that. I think a auction would be pretty fun. And if you couldn't be at the auction, if you absolutely couldn't be there, you could just put values on your players. You could assemble a list. But I don't think that should happen. I think everybody should be at the live draft. We would plan it well in advance, like months in advance, and make sure that everybody is going to be there. But if you couldn't, the system has ways of like doing auto valuations for players, or you can set the valuations for players. And your team would, if you weren't there, your team would automatically nominate a player when it became their turn. You can make the settings such that they will do that. But at any rate, the inflation would go down simply because it encourages player movement. Teams moving players, and it wouldn't be so bad because a lot of times you're going to have a guy that you paid a lot for who's really not worth the money. So you might have a guy you're paying like $17 for, another guy you're paying, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8. You waive those two guys, you clear out enough cap space to where, and two roster spots to where you'd have some free agent cash to play with in the next draft. It is a continuous league, so these free agent drafts would not have all the best players in them, but it would be exciting because you got the rookies and you have anybody who was waived. There would be basically a fight over these players, with the money, and you would still be able to get cheap rookies because if people are limited in their cash flow, when it comes their turn, you can nominate a rookie for $1 or $2, and nobody's really going to have the money to outbid you. If everybody's down in funds, somebody has to. You get the right to get the first bid. So the smart thing to do is maybe put down $2, $3 to guarantee you get that player, because other teams are sitting there with like maybe $7 and they need 3 players. They're not going to be able to outbid you on that. They're not going to be able to go 4 because they're spending all their money unless they really like the player. But that's just something to consider when teams when they would have like a bad record and they have the top spot in the draft, it would be their turn to pick. That's their chance to put a nice healthy bid up on one of the top players coming into the league, one of those can't miss prospects like a Victor Wembanyama, right? Okay, that's enough for now. I'm gonna shut this thing down for the day. Here and there, I'm going to probably skip the show just because football season is getting down to the nitty gritty. There's going to be bowl games coming up in my college style league. Bowl season is December, so I'm probably going to reserve these mornings for a show for that league. So there'll be times I'll let you guys know in the chat here at the league that I'm not going to be doing a show the next day, and basically I'll try to backtrack when I do make the show and cover any hot players from the day before. I'll do like 2 days worth of hot players just so everybody gets a mention if they had a great performance from one of their fantasy guys. I know it's nice to get a shout out on your players, but at any rate, I'll leave you here with the top 8 standings as they are right now. The Guardians coming in at 8th, the Saints at 7th, Poway at 6th. You got the Pistons at 5th, Rockets are 4th, Showtime is 3rd, Warriors are 2nd, Copperheads are the number 1 spot for now. The game period ends tomorrow night, Thursday, and we'll have some new results by Friday morning. Good day, everybody. I'll talk to you later.